Hello everyone, my name is Rob, welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be painting a Blood Angels Redemptor Dreadnought. I'm really excited to show you this one today. It's been in my back pocket for some time. This Redemptor's been built, ready to rock and roll for a fair few months now, but just not had a opportunity to get it painted, and didn't really know what to do with it. I kind of had considered Imperial Fists and Blood Angels and Dark Angels as well in kind of 40k schemes, but knew that I wanted to do something with sponge painting on a slightly larger canvas, because it's certainly something I get asked about an awful lot, and I think that you can take lots of the lessons that we have learned on this Redemptor Dreadnought, and then you can apply it to your tanks as well. And again, I think it just goes to show how versatile a sponge can be, particularly if you don't have an airbrush, but you still want to be able to create quite kind of like cool fades from dark to light on the panels on your armor. So let's hop straight into it. Okay, so we are going to start off by base coating the metallic elements with heavy metal. You can do this with a brush, or you can do this with an airbrush if you have an airbrush. I tend to like doing it this way, certainly like the Saturnine Dreadnought that I've worked on recently for Horusheresy. I actually base coated all of the metallic elements first and then went in and airbrushed the panels and then just did kind of like touch-ups from there. But once the skeleton has been painted, we then just go in with, I just went in with a brush and painted 2 thin coats of Basilisk Red. So this is basically good to go. Now we will get some red on, as we move up through our brighter layers of red. I will get red on the skeleton. There's no way to avoid that really, unless you're being really, really careful or you mask it off. But that can just be touched up. What I'm trying to avoid here is just kind of that very laborious, time-consuming amount of work in terms of kind of like going in to the skeleton, into all the nooks and crannies, and just avoiding the armor panels. I find working in reverse is a little bit safer. So next up, in terms of our first highlight, we are going to be using a mix of Pure Red and Basilisk Red. Basilisk Red is quite a cool red, and Pure Red is also described in terms of the Army Painter's Triad as a cool red, but it's got some, Pure Red actually has quite a lot of vibrancy to it. I believe, if memory serves me, it was reformulated to have a little bit more of a punch to it. I think there was a couple of reds that were reformulated after the kind of like the initial wave went out, and this red is pretty hot to trot. I think the other thing I would say, so you may have seen as well that it was called Command Red. If I showed the pot in the video, but it's exactly the same as Pure Red. It's just the Command Red is from the historical ranges. So the beauty blender that I'm using, you can get them in packs of 10 from Amazon. Yeah, they're for makeup, but they're perfect for this. And what you could see me doing there is just soaking it in some water and then wringing it out. So this will allow you, this process of kind of wringing it out and making it wet will allow you to create smoother blends. What I've found is if you don't make the sponge wet, then the paint that you apply onto the model becomes quite textured, so you're almost kind of like thinning the paint through the wetness of the sponge before it goes on. Now it doesn't matter too much if you're going to kind of use a gloss varnish, because usually those kind of like that texture kind of goes, but I think most of us probably want quite kind of smooth layers on our armor plates. So yeah, just I would recommend wetting it before you do it, or maybe have an experiment and see which one you like. You know, don't wet a sponge and do one that has been wet, and then see how you go. In terms of the highlights, so I did want to put as much footage in as possible. I'm working really around, I don't know, like a 70 to 80% highlight maybe. This is quite broad, and then this is really going to get us to the foundation of the colour that we want for Blood Angels. Lots of the Basilisk Red, the initial Basilisk Red, is actually going to be hidden because we're going to glaze some Hive Dweller Purple into the shadows of it a little bit later. So it's just a decent base coat really. This is the start of kind of like the real punchy Blood Angels red colour that we want. I think I did about 2 layers in total, and then what I'd also highly recommend is just wait for it to dry completely before then trying to apply more paint on top of it. Otherwise you're going to lift paint away, and then again you're going to create a texture that you probably don't want, and ideally you would want to avoid as well. In terms of the actual highlighting, you can see that I'm working in reverse. It will become more apparent as the video goes on, but I am working in reverse to how you might expect a Dreadnought to be highlighted, like a Redemptor Dreadnought to be highlighted. I do this on purpose, and you may have seen my tanks before. I kind of do a reverse highlight on the tanks, like on the side of the panels and on the front and on the rear, and that is really, in this short video, I won't go into it too much, but essentially it's just to emphasize the blockiness of Space Marine vehicles. The Redemptor's a really, really good example of something that's just quite blocky and is made up of lots of like 90-degree angles, 45-degree angles, and in order for it to look good from like 3 feet away, emphasizing that blockiness with quite stylistic highlighting, I think looks good. Other people will disagree, and you can highlight it however you want to. Like, I'm not going to take it personally, but I just think that from 3 feet away, kind of like having a highlighting style like this, I think that's quite cool. And as I say, I've put as much footage in as possible to this video, so you can kind of see where the highlights are being placed. So hopefully that is useful for you guys. And then you can see, having a smaller beauty blender, having a smaller sponge, it helps you to get into those nooks and crannies. That, like, the hip armor is actually quite difficult to get to, even with that smaller beauty blender. So if you're using ginormous ones, I would highly recommend just using something smaller. If you're doing tanks, then I'd probably recommend something slightly larger than this one. Right, next up we are going to go to pure red now. So we're abandoning Basilisk Red, and then we are applying just pure red. And really we're working, you can see here, around the 50% mark in terms of the highlighting. And then what you can do with the sponge is just kind of feather that out. So you want a transition between the previous step, the previous highlight, and this one. And the sponge is quite useful, just dabbing over and over and over again into that mid-tone area in order to kind of smooth it out. And then you can see at this step now, with the highlight of pure red, kind of where the highlights are going to be going, and then just the pop of that red as well. Like, this is actually a really, really vibrant red, and I was really pleased with how the red came out on this one, and definitely would consider using these colours in the future. I think the other thing as well is, if you're watching this kind of going, oh, I like the colour, but I have an airbrush, just use the colours. Just use the colours and airbrush them. Like, it really is as simple as that. Yeah, I suppose using a sponge, even if you have an airbrush, using a sponge is quite good, because you're able to create texture on an armour, which probably is more realistic to what kind of Space Marine armour would probably look like. It wouldn't be like massively smooth fades. It would have kind of indentations and things like that in it, and multiple layers of paint over and over and over again. So actually having this kind of like texturized sponge look probably looks pretty good. And if you just can't be bothered to get the airbrush out, then this is also another way to go about doing it. Next up, we're going to use Fiery Vermillion. So this is a colour that I use an awful lot. This is one of the John Blanche Masterclass colours. So from my understanding, I think this is only available from the Army Painter directly. I could be wrong about that one. And if you use the code MEDAS5 at checkout, you get 5% off. But yeah, this is a really vibrant red. Like, the combination of pure red and then followed by Fiery Vermillion is a really nice combo for Blood Angels. And as you can see, it covers really, really well. Even just with a sponge here, 1 or 2 layers, and then you're away. You're good to go. But yeah, you can again start to see where we're going with this. And what I'm going to do some highlights a little bit later, and I'm going to add in some glazes into the shadows in a moment. But what I would say is that if you're happy with this colour as is at the moment, just keep it here. Like, you don't need to glaze any purples into the shadows if you don't want to. If you're happy with this colour and you're kind of like, yeah, this looks great, I'm really pleased with this, then just stick with this. And you can do this with infantry as well. I mean, I've done lots of sponge painting videos and even Blood Angels videos where I've just used a sponge before. So you get an army done pretty quickly. Like, this Redemptor Dreadnought was painted, I think, probably in 3 hours maybe in total, and that was using oils and things like that. So I think that you can do it at speed. Right, next up we're going to use Hive Dweller Purple, and I've thinned this with some speed paint medium. This is a purple that I would often use to shade reds with. And then there's two options that you can do here. The first option is you can take a brush and then you can glaze that purple into the shadows. Now this is a laborious way to do it, okay? And I think that, if I'm honest, your blends will not be super smooth unless you really take your time to layer up those glazes, you know, bit at a time, bit at a time, bit at a time. But what it does is it brings this purple into the shadows, which is quite nice, and then it further accentuates the contrast on the panels as well. It's not necessary, but it is a way that you can go about doing it. And I did this on the Blood Angels Terminator that I did not too long ago as well. However, what I did do for speed was just airbrush this into the shadows. So, you know, if you're new to airbrushing, this is quite a cool way just to go about kind of like practicing a little bit of airbrushing. It's relatively straightforward and simple. Hive Dweller Purple straight through the airbrush, no thinning whatsoever. PSI around 30, and then you can just bang this into the shadows of the model, essentially where the Basilisk Red is, you know, that we initially put down, and then this will just further create contrast on the model. So you can glaze it with a brush, but if you have an airbrush, you can also go in and do it with the airbrush as well. And again, it's not, you know, you might be wondering, well, why is he just doing it with a sponge if he has access to an airbrush? Well, you know, some of you might like that kind of like textured look that a sponge brings, but also you want that kind of like high contrast look to the armor as well. So using them in combination with each other, actually, I think personally looks quite cool. So yeah, and as you can see here, like the shadows have really accentuated and really helped that red to pop even further. Purple is a great color to shade with. You could also use blue as well. I think you just got to get the tone of blue correct. Yeah, but I think yeah, it's good combination using the purples and the reds here. Right, next up we're going to use a combination of Blood Chalice and Legendary Red. And then I mix those two together in a 50-50 mix. And what you can see me doing here with a large makeup brush, which is nice and soft and has long bristles, I'm just picking out the edges of the armor. So basically you could go in and edge highlight everything if you wanted to, or not, as the case may be. Like, you don't need to edge highlight anything if you don't want to. You can just do a bit of chipping on the edges of the armor and negatively kind of edge highlight it. But this just is a quick and easy way for kind of edge highlighting vehicles, tanks, things like that. You probably couldn't get away with really doing it with infantry. It'd be much harder. But for something this size with so many edges on it, I think it's perfect. And if you want to, you can go in and reinforce those edges with a brush kind of afterwards. And using like a long bristle brush like this just helps you to catch those edges without catching kind of like the flat surfaces of the armor. But this is great on tanks. Like the Kratos is perfect for this if you're into 30k. Like, you know, it's got so many edges that you just dry brush it, and all the edges are kind of edge highlighted for you. And then you can see me here just going in. Not every single. I won't do this on every single edge, but just the main ones, particularly around the torso, because that's where people will kind of focus and look. Just picking out the edge highlights here, and just getting that pop. The edge against that kind of like purple shadow does look really, really nice, in my opinion. So it's worth probably kind of just going to town on this and adding a few edge highlights here and there. Right, next up, so we are into the touch-up stages now. So we are done in terms of our red for the moment. We will come back to it, but now that it's kind of the majority of it has been completed, you can then go back in and just touch up the red elements. And it didn't take long at all, like a couple of minutes, and then we're good to go. As I say, I would do dreadnoughts like Redemptor Dreadnoughts and things like that, where it's got kind of like an under silver skeleton. I would do it this way, yeah, moving forward, because it's just such a time saver. One of the things that like is so time consuming is painting that skeleton and trying to avoid the red armor. It's just such a hassle, you know, and all the nooks and crannies and stuff are already painted silver, and you can't get with the sponge into those places, so you know it's already done for you. So yeah, highly recommend. Next up, we're using Greedy Gold and Rough Iron just to pick out some gold elements of it. I did have a look at Games Workshop's like box art. They use black on this one. I thought I'd just go a little bit fancier, use some gold. Nothing amazing. I'm just kind of just base coating everything ready to rock and roll. I would have just used Greedy Gold, but adding in just a dash of Rough Iron into this just gives it a little bit of a bite. So essentially it's just one coat and then you're done. If you use Greedy Gold just on its own, it's a really nice color, but what I would say is that it's quite thin, so it's gonna require you to do multiple coats to kind of get decent coverage. Adding in just a bit of Rough Iron, it just adds a little bit of bite to the paint, and it's one coat. And also actually the combination of those two paints actually just creates a really nice and pleasant gold. So you can see here what it looks like so far. So basically we've done all the red elements, we've done all the silver elements, and we've done all the gold elements as well. And basically this is, you know, the majority at this point was done. Like I looked at this and was like, yeah, okay, like you could actually just base this and then you could go play with this, and I think it would look pretty decent. But we do want to add some transfers on. We want to do a little bit of battle damage, and we want to add some oils on as well. So what I have done here is I've gloss varnished the model. I've used the spray can gloss varnish. I probably shouldn't have used the spray can gloss varnish on the day that I did, because it was so cold that I had a little bit of texture on the gloss varnish, which does disappear when I put the matte varnish down, but it was quite unusual for me to have that with that particular lacquer that I use. But it was just so, it was like -2 degrees. I don't know, for many viewers that is not cold at all, but in the UK that is pretty chilly. So yeah, just be mindful when using gloss varnishes, you know, what the temperature is outside. And then you can see me here just adding on our transfers using microset and microsol. I've done a whole video about using transfers, so if you're not familiar with them, you don't know how to use them, then please go take a look. But what I would highly recommend is you doing a gloss varnish before applying your transfer, and in that video I kind of talk to you about the reason why you should do that. The transfer sheet itself is just like the generic Blood Angels transfer sheet. I just kind of picked a few vehicle transfers off of it. I think it was from like the new Sanguinary guard kit. I think it came in that from memory. And then what you can see me doing here, that edge highlight color that we used previously, that Blood Chalice and Legendary Red combination, what I'm doing here is I'm just adding a little bit more chipping in here and there. So what I'm going to do after this is use some Banshee Brown to add in some actual kind of, yeah, I guess some ceramite or chipping where the armor has been chipped and flaked away. But this just kind of builds up kind of a nice base coat and just kind of shows some newer scratches, I guess, or some kind of, just helps the brown that we're going to put on later kind of appear a little bit 3D. You could do this all by hand and underline each chip if you want, but I'm not going to do that. We haven't got time for that, and we just want something that's like essentially tabletop, you know, standard, ready to rock and roll, that's straightforward. So just doing it with a sponge like this, just picking out the corners and the edges, and then adding brown on the top of that, which you'll see in the next part of this video, just looks quite cool, and it's quite an easy way to go about doing your chipping. If you're finding it's not got enough bite against the gloss varnish, then you probably should avoid adding water to it. Like this paint is just straight from the pot. I haven't thinned it in any way, shape or form, because obviously it's trying to, you know, attach to a gloss varnished model, so it needs a little bit of bite to it. And then here we are using Banshee Brown, which is just like a nice generic dark brown color. Again though, it is one of the John Blanche paints, so I think, again, don't quote me on this, but I believe this is only available through the Army Painter directly, and not available kind of like as just part of their Wall Paints Fanatic paints. But they do sell them as singles, so you don't necessarily need to buy the whole kind of like masterclass set. But there are some quality colours in that set, like the Fiery Vermillion, the Banshee Brown, the Heavy Metal. Like all of those are some go-tos for me nowadays. And then just on the edges here, you can see I'm adding on this Banshee Brown, just picking out the edges where I think the battle damage will look quite cool. If you want your battle damage to show up more, then you could use silver. I do recognise that brown doesn't show up as well on red, especially red like this, of this hue. But if you are somebody who's absolutely mad for battle damage, then I can highly recommend that you just use some kind of silver chipping rather than a dark brown. But I think this is quite subtle. I think it looks quite cool. I won't get into the whys and wherefores of what coloured armour ceramite is. I'm not going to go into that level of pedantry today. But yeah, it's up to you ultimately what you want to make your kind of ceramite colour. And then next up we are going to do the oil. So I've now re-glossed everything. So everything's protected, all the battle damage is protected, all the transfers are protected. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just using lamp black. Somebody a few days ago asked me what am I going to pin wash this with, or what oils are going to use, because in a previous video I think I'd used like a purple pin wash, and I think I mixed it with a little bit of black from memory. But I just wanted to do something different today. I've just used lamp black, Winsor & Newton, mixed it with a little bit of white spirit, and I'm just using it to pin wash the whole vehicle. What I'm not doing is absolutely sloshing on the oils like I did in the previous video when I did the Blood Angels Terminator. I'm actually being a bit more careful here. And again, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I just want to show you a different technique. Like that is literally it. I just want to show you something different. What does black look like? Oils look like on red? To what extent does it darken it down? And to what extent can we maintain the vibrancy of the colour if we're just careful with that pin wash? Because of course, one of the big things, if you slosh this black all over the model, including the red armour panels, then even if you try and wipe it away and clean it up, it's still going to stain to some extent the underlying red, and it will knock it back. And that's not what I wanted. I still wanted quite a vibrant red. So, I decided actually I would just go and pin wash this. But ultimately, again, it's up to you. You can make the decisions here. I just want to show you the techniques. And then this combination of those two videos, I think, would be quite good if you're looking to start a Blood Angels force, or looking to start a kind of, I don't know, like a Corsairs force, now that we've got Huron Blackheart on the way. And in terms of the metallic parts and the gold parts, basically just you can use this as an overall wash. So yeah, like we would any kind of like tone or washes or anything like that, we want to stain this. We do want to stain this area, so we can just go over complete with this. You could use browns if you wanted to, but I'm going to be honest with you, I was just being a bit lazy. I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to use black. It would probably be more traditional to use some kind of like brown oil on these gold parts, but it was literally there, ready to rock and roll, and just creates a different tone of gold as well. So once that has dried, I think I left it in the airing cupboard for an hour or so, then all we need to do is just go in with a cotton wool bud or a Q-tip, and then just wipe away any excess oils, places where we've been a little bit careless, or where maybe we've been a bit heavy-handed on rivets and things like that. And then you can just wipe this away using a clean cotton wool bud. I didn't need to dip this in any white spirits because I'd only left it for an hour, so the oils weren't very stubborn at all. So you can just go straight in with the Q-tip and then kind of like wipe away the excess. And you'll notice that I've done the base, and then at this point I've matte varnished it all. So I did the base, just added a bit of texture and then some rocks and stuff like that, and then matte varnished the whole thing, and then it's ready to rock and roll. So it's good for all of the next steps now, and you can start to see what the kind of like the red looks like. And then next up, we need to add a little bit of luster back into those silvers and into those golds, because they've been matted down, we've obviously lost a lot of luster here. So with our shining silver, so this is like a mid to high silver. It's not the brightest silver, but with shiny silver, what I'm doing is I'm just going in with a makeup brush again, slightly shorter makeup brush this time, and just dry brushing it just to bring a little bit of luster to it, and then I'll do the same with the golds eventually. And it's again up to you how heavy-handed you want to be, but remember this is a pretty banged up dreadnought. So we've got to make the golds fit with the golds and the silvers fit with the rest of the vibe of the model. So we don't need to go kind of too bright, and we don't need to be kind of too precise and exact with our highlights and our golds. We can be pretty rough with them. And you can see here, just with pure greedy gold, just dry brushing, just to bring a little bit of luster back into these as well. And that's all I'll do for the silvers and golds. Nothing more than that. Pretty straightforward. I did think like lots of these kind of like ball sockets and stuff like that, you know, painting them gold I think looks pretty flashy. I always think of blood angels as artisans and artists and poets and things like that, so I think that adding kind of gold here and there I think often looks quite good, especially for like 30k, but the same can be said for 40k as well. In terms of the other details, the missiles, I just painted a turquoise colour, really straightforward, and you can highlight like base coat of deep azure and then highlight it with a slightly lighter turquoise. You could do them just, you know, like a normal blue, but I think blue works and contrasts nicely against the red. And it was also a choice of kind of like the lenses. I'm going to do blue as well, but we'll get to those in a second. But you can paint them black, you can paint them yellow. I think yellow would work quite well just because you've already got yellow transfers on there. I think that would look quite cool, but it would probably attract sort of attention away from the main armor if they like bright spots of yellow. In terms of the lenses, really straightforward, so just painted them with the brightest possible silver, so mithril silver here, and then going with some Caribbean Ocean, which is a speed paint. I'm just applying this over that silver lens, and then that will give kind of like a shininess to it, like a real lens would have. So again, this is just like tabletop standard stuff, you know, really straightforward to get on the table. And then the actual lamp light, I painted white and then hit it with some maize yellow, and then I do give it a wash of orange tone afterwards as well. And then I just painted the silver, you know, the wire mesh that goes around it. I just painted that silver. In terms of the base, really straightforward, so just using liquid pigments here. I've done videos about liquid pigments before and they're really straightforward to use. If you want to try like weathering powders and stuff for your bases, I'd highly recommend liquid pigments because they're way less messy than just like normal pigments, and slightly easier to control as well, and there's loads of like colours out there on the market that you can use. And then we just leave that to dry, and you can see we've got this kind of like brown dusty base. Looks quite cool with the rocks and stuff on it, but it's really straightforward. You could add tusks on it, but you know, by this point I was kind of a bit like, yeah, let's just get the base done. And then using black on the rim, just a nice matte black on the rim, really straightforward, and it's done. But you could, you know, you could use Banshee brown, you could use oak brown as well if you want brown base rims. I have no preference either way. I think both look quite cool. It's quite, in Horus Heresy it's quite traditional to just stick with black, but in 40k it could be any colour. And then with that done, we are then going to see what the Dreadnought looks like, all finished and done and ready to make war upon the enemy. And this is it. This is our Redemptor Blood Angels Redemptor Dreadnought finished, ready for war. So yeah, a couple of things kind of just to draw out from this. You know, the reverse highlight is the main one, I think. The versatility of the sponge, like being able to do it on vehicles, and then sort of either glazing some purples into the shadows, either with an airbrush or with a brush. Either one of those I think looks really cool. And then altogether, you know, pretty straightforward paint job, but actually I think it looks pretty decent. Guys, I just want to thank you ever so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. A big thank you to the Army Painter for supporting this videos, and also a massive, humongous thank you and big kisses to all my Patreons who support me over there as well, where you guys can get additional tutorials, Q&As each month, and all sorts. I'm hoping to ramp up the content to even more over the course of 2026, so please go consider, for £4 a month, that's all it costs, so please go consider supporting me over there. Anyway, for now, thanks ever so much. I hope you guys have a great new year, and I shall see you on the next one.